Hello and welcome back to Matt's Automotive channel. In this video, we're going to be putting on all the timing gear for this Ford 4.6 liter dual overhead cam. In one of the previous videos, I did go ahead and install the secondary timing chain and sprockets. However, I'm going to pull these back off just so I can go through the complete process with you. On the primary chains, if you have new ones, you'll see that the links, there'll be two links on each chain that are slightly a different color. However, this has been washed and cleaned so many times, we lost those marks. So I just laid them out here end to end and put a mark, one on each end, so 180-degree offset. You want to do those on both of the timing chains. Okay, so I'm going to undo a little bit of my work. These bolts here on the front of the cams are an 18 mm. So I'm going to pull this off. What I want to show you, there is a special tool that will bind these two cams together so you can apply some torque to these bolts on the front of the cams. However, you can also, if you look here in the back, you'll see that that's a 3/8 inch square, which means you can take one of these socket wrenches with a small extension and it'll fit right into the end there, and you can use that to hold the cam. So that's what I'm going to do to get these bolts off. All right. Break this guy loose here. There we go. Okay, we got those bolts loose. Now I can just take them out by hand. Okay, now that loose, we can just zip these off. In order to get the chain off, we need to compress this tensioner, and there's a little hole in the nylon part here. You can use a paper clip or a nail to fit in there. So just anyway, compress it. Put your clip in there, and then that'll hold it in place, which will leave the tension on these guys, and we can just slide it off. There we go. Same thing on this side. Okay, and slide these off. They kind of have to come off together. There's a very tight fit, like so. Okay, we also need to mark the secondary chains as well, and they're brand new. They're discolored, and I think if I look real close, I can see a little discoloration on this link and this link. But anyway, these discolorated links are going to line up with the dots on these sprockets here, and they're 6 links apart basically. So just start at 1. This one looks a little discolored, so I'm going to start right here, and we'll count 6 over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like so. And those marks again are going to line up with the little dots here. So we'll put that on so that mark lines up right with the dot there, and then the same thing over here. So kind of put this together before you put it onto the cylinder head. So you can see 6 apart, and they're both straight up now. So let's move over and put it onto the block. Now, before we put the sprockets on here, these little keyways here should be facing down towards the crank. So I'll put a socket here on the bottom, and we'll get that. Actually, you don't need a socket. You can just turn these by hand. And okay, so about like that. So that gets it pretty close. Before we attempt to put these on the motor, I want to point out something that's kind of important. All of these sprockets here, all 4 of them are the same. However, on the left side, or the driver's side, we're going to put onto the motor with it in that direction instead of this direction. It has to do with the offset of the chain when we put this guy on. because one chain's going to be in further and one's out a little further. So anyway, the one that's out the furthest is going to be on the left side. So we actually need to use this space here to kind of offset it out. So anyway, just keep that in mind before you put it on. If you put it backwards, it'll probably be pretty obvious because the chain won't line up with the guides if you get it wrong. But just something to note, and get it right the first time. So let's put on the right side first. And again, this little spaced edge here is going to be on the outside. You kind of just have to hold this top one up to get it above the guide there. And just kind of tap it on there. And just visually check the thing to make sure that it lines up perfect with the guide. Now you can see this little flange here is on the outside. Now it's going to be reversed on the other side. So let's go ahead and grab this one and put this guy on. So the flange side here is facing the motor. There we go. And just to check, it's lined up perfectly here. And you can see if we didn't put it on this way with the flange on this side, the chain would be too far in and would hit the cylinder head here. So anyway, we got that in. So next, we can just go ahead and pull the pin out and put the tension back onto the chain. There we go. Okay, next thing we can do is put on these little spacers here on the top cams, or the intake cams. And the reason for that is without this little guy here, if you bolt it in, there'd be nothing holding this sprocket inward. So basically this spacer here just allows us to put tension on that with the bolt. And there's like a little keyway here. It doesn't really matter. You can put it on any way you like. And you can see that this edge protrudes a little bit beyond the end of the cam. So when we bolt this down, it'll hold that top sprocket to the cam. Okay, same thing on the other side. Now let's put on our lower left chain guide. And this particular one here has a long bolt and a short bolt. This long one is the one that's going to go through the oil pump. So let's line her up here. And these bolts here will get torqued down to 89 inch-pounds. There we go. Now let's put on the upper right guide. And again, these get torqued down to 89 inch-pounds. Now let's position the crank so that this key here is facing the 10 o'clock position. That puts number 1 cylinder at top dead center. So about there. And we have this crankshaft tool that will give us perfect alignment. See, it needs to come down a little bit more because this little hole here should go over this stud when it's perfectly aligned. Let's see. Get her here. There we go, right there. Now let's put on the crank sprocket. Make sure you get it on the right way. And there's this beveled edge here that should be out, and you'll know because it's got the little dot here. The other side does not. So it goes on like so. Now let's put the camshaft sprockets on. The one with the holes go on the right side, as it says right there. And the other one on the left side. And make sure that you put them on so the dot is facing the front. And then let's loosely put these bolts in for right now. Now these are going to get torqued down to 30 pound-feet plus an additional 90 degrees. All right, let's torque these sprocket bolts down to 30 pound-feet. Now there is a special tool that holds the cams in place. However, as I had previously mentioned, You can also hold them by putting a 3/8 inch socket extension into the end of the cam. And there we go. There's our 30. And let's just do all the torques right now, and then we'll do all the angles at once as well. Right there. Okay. Now we'll just do an additional 90, and those are done. All right, just to show you how I'm going to hold the cams in place, I'm going to put this extension into the end here, and then I'm just going to let it sit right here. And then I'll go over here and start cranking it. This should hold in place. I'll get my 30-pound feet in. Let's see here. Right there. Okay, now I know that this isn't going to move, so now I can do my 90 degrees. This lower exhaust cam here is the one it's being held in place. So I'll just start with the wrench facing straight down, and then when it's parallel with the ground, there's my 90 degrees. And there we go. Now just do the same thing for the other 3. Now on this side, I'm just going to start with it horizontal and then go vertical. There we go. Now let's go ahead and put our primary chain on. And remember, on the opposite ends of the chain, we have marked with this little yellow line there. Now those marks are going to line up with these timing dots. And we're going to have to install the left side first. And that's because that chain is set further back. If we were to do the other side first, we wouldn't be able to get this one on. So, and the line that we have drawn there, we want to line up with that dot there. And then, let's see, I'll try to show you down here. There's the dot on the crank sprocket, and our little yellow line there will need to line up so that it is in line with that dot. All right, now we got the left side done. Now we just need to do the same thing with the right side. We got that lined up, and also the bottom. Now these swivel guides, they look very similar, but there is a difference. If you look at them from here, you'll see that this has a little thicker spot where on this hinge here. So this is the right side, and that protrusion there is going to go on towards the inside. It spaces it out, in other words. Okay, like so. And this one, like that. Next, we want to get our tensioners on. There's a left and right designation here. But before we can put these on, we need to compress the piston there and then put a holding pin in. So let's take this over to the vise and compress it. Now, before I put this in the vise, I kind of want to show you what we're going to do here. We're going to compress this down, but this little ratcheting portion here also needs to go down. And if you look in this little hole here, we can stick something there and push those little teeth to the side so that this can go down. So let's go ahead and put it in here. And we'll start compressing until we get to the little ratchet, and then we'll put something there and then push that down so we can continue to compress the piston. Okay, I'm going to use a little ice pick here and just push this over to the side. I think I'm blocking it there. So I can push that down. As long as that's down, I can go ahead and compress this. Okay, we'll push this all the way down now. And then we'll put a pin in there to hold it. Okay, I got this little pin here. Goes in here, and then we can let go of this. And now the little ratchet mechanism is what's holding the piston in. Now we can take it over to the motor and bolt it in. Okay, it goes right here. And again, you want to make sure that the mating surfaces here are nice and clean and there's no debris. These are actually hydraulically actuated. Once the motor's running, it builds oil pressure in here and then pushes out additional force on this piston. And then this ratcheting mechanism, once it goes out, it cannot come back in, so it holds it in place. Okay, now these bolts here are going to get torqued down to 18 pound-feet. All right, torque wrench is set to 18 pound-feet, and we'll just torque these in here. Okay, now we can go ahead and pull the pin. And we'll just do the same thing to the other side. All right, I just went ahead and compressed the right side as I did the left. Now this one goes on the underside. Again, make sure that your mating surfaces are clean. Okay, 18 pound-feet, and pull the pin. What I'd like to do next is try to get all the slack out of this and get the ratchet out as far as possible. And so I try to create a little bit of slack here just by rocking this back and forth a little bit and then squeezing these together. And sometimes you'll hear it click, which means that you made a little bit of progress. Now, let's get a little bit of oil on these parts and the chains, so on that first startup, it's not completely dry. Okay, this is real important, but this little piece here that goes onto the crank is very important because this is what the crank position sensor reads. And the car will not start without this, so this has to be on. This particular one here does indicate front, so it's going to go on this way, just like so. Now we can turn our attention to the cam followers. So let's get all these out. I did end up replacing two of them. Two of them had rusted pretty bad, and so I threw those out and got some new ones. These particular ones are milling. Let's get these out. Okay, so you definitely want to get these oiled up before you put them on. Probably not a bad idea to soak them in oil overnight before putting them on. Now I have previously soaked these, so I think they're in pretty good shape, but I'm going to put just a little bit more on here. And I like to spin them before I put them on just to make sure that I can tell that they're lubricated. I want to make sure there's no play in it, vertically anyway, this way. They can go side to side a little bit, of course. And then they shouldn't feel crunchy or anything. They should just rotate nice and smooth and quiet. If they're noisy at all, you need to get it replaced. Before putting those rollers in, we want to make sure that we do not have any kind of valve to piston contact. You want to make sure that these lobes are in the up position. What I'm going to do is put this down into the spark plug so I can actually see it go up and rise and fall with the piston, and then I'll know for sure that the piston is not at the top of its travel, which would be, of course, unsafe to compress the springs at that point. So let's go ahead and rotate it until we get this in a favorable position. We'll just start here with cylinder 1, and I'm going to get it so these cam lobes here are in the up position. Now you should only turn this crank counterclockwise. Now, as you can see here, the piston is falling and the cam lobes are coming up. So we'll rotate this until the cam lobes are straight up. At this point, we know it's safe to compress the spring a bit and not have to worry about valve to piston contact. Now we can prep the cam follower for installation, and I'm just going to hit it here with another little shot of oil. And not only on the roller here, but also on the back side where the cam follower rubs against the spring, and then also the lash adjuster. Okay, now we can go ahead and put this into the motor. Okay, so the way that I do this is slide the cam collar in over the spring, and then kind of line it up with the lash adjuster here. And as you can see, I can almost get this with my hand just by pushing it, but I'm gonna pry against the wall here. With the cam follower in here, I'm gonna put this little metal piece down here so I'm not prying right against the block itself. And then I'm just gonna lift this and push it over. That easy. Now we're gonna use a little different technique for the one up on top. And I'll show you what I do there because I don't really have anything good to pry against. And now to do the top one here, I got to reposition the cam so the lobes are sticking up. So I'm going to just turn the crank here and make sure that the piston here is going down and the cam lobes are coming up. Again, this will avoid any kind of valve to piston contact. So there we go. Now let's get the lash adjuster in there. All right, now as we did before, same thing. I'm going to put the cam follower in here, place it over the valve, and then line it up with the lash adjuster. And I need to push it on just like as before, but this time I don't have anything to really pry against. So what I'm going to do is tap it in. So I'm going to use this socket extension here. Just kind of push it up against the bottom here. Get a mallet here, and then just kind of tap it into place. Just like so. Now all I need to do is repeat that same process for the rest of the valves. Okay, now we got all the cam followers in, so before we go any further, let's lube everything up one last time. We'll get all the cam lobes with oil, and also the chains, and the chain guides, around the sprockets. And then once we have it all oiled up, let's just turn it a few times. That will also ensure that all the cam followers are in and working. Look on both sides. Make sure nothing pops out and everything, the valves are operating. Make sure everything looks like it's working correctly. And go around a couple times. It'll take 2 turns of the crank for every 1 turn of the camshafts. So if you go 2 times and everything still looks like it's in place, you're probably good to go. All right, everything's looking pretty good. So the next step is going to be to put the timing cover on. So let's get started on that. Let's turn our attention to the timing chain cover now. And this already had some gaskets previously installed. I think they're fairly new. They look new, they feel new, they're not compressed. So I'm going to try to reuse these. Although there has been some RTV used on this already, I think if I just put a little bit more on there, it should seal fine still. I'm also going to take my chance with the front main seal, the crankshaft seal. It looks like it's in good shape. I'm sure there's not too many miles on this one. And the spring is in there. There's no pinches or anything. Everything looks good. I don't see any wear. I did take the crankshaft position sensor out, and looks like even the O-ring on this is good. It's not really compressed. It's not rotting out or anything. So I'm just going to keep all of this the same. So let's just go ahead and try to put this on as is. The only place that I'm going to add some RTV at this time is right here where the gasket has a break in it. As far as down near the bottom where the oil pan goes, I'm just going to leave that as well. And of course, when we put the oil pan on, then we'll put some additional RTV there. And the same thing as well with the valve covers. So these top portions of the gasket I'm going to leave as is right now as well. Now I have already cleaned up the mating surfaces with the valve cover, which are these 2 places on top, here and here, and then also, of course, in the bottom here, where the oil pan fits. This has all been cleaned up. So, let's go ahead and get this thing on. Let's get all the bolts out that we'll need, and there's a proper torquing sequence that I'll also put up here on the screen in a sec. Here are all the timing chain cover bolts, and I just put them in a bag here, and as you'll see here, they're not all the same. So we need to make sure that they go into the proper place. Here's an attempt to kind of lay them out and organize them a bit and kind of compare to see what we have. So I kind of grouped them all together here, and even though these long ones here all look the same, there is some differences here. This particular one, you'll see that the threads come up a lot higher than these. So I'll have to refer to the manual and determine exactly where these things belong before we try to put this thing together. Now, as you can see, this from the factory service manual does kind of lay it all out. It has all the bolts there numbered and shows what sequence they need to be tightened in. And then also they have the size of bolt listed here as well. So we should be able to just find the numbers here, look at the bolts here, and then figure out which holes that they go into. All right, I think I got them all sorted out there, and these 4 short ones here, they weren't on this particular list, and that's because they're really part of the oil pan, so they go into the bottom here. So I'm gonna put these 4 bolts over by the oil pan. Okay, we got all the bolts in their respective places, so let's go ahead and put a little bit RTV where the gasket brake is, and bolt this up to the block. All right, just took the bolts out and kind of put them in the order in which we're gonna put them back in. So let's go ahead and flip this thing over now and get some RTV on the gasket. Okay, right here's what the little brake is in the gasket. I'm gonna use some ultra black, and we'll just put a little dab there. And I think I'll also put a little bit down here where there was previously some RTV, just in case it's not going to seal just perfect. Just put a little bit there, a little bit here, and maybe up here, and maybe a little bit up here where there was some previously. Let's go ahead and bolt her up. Put this in here. At least one bolt to hold it while I get the others in. I just got all these down snug. I haven't torqued them yet. And the 2 bolt sizes that we're dealing with are an 18 and a 13. And I'll go ahead and put up on the screen here the torque sequence for these bolts. And I'll just go ahead and torque these down. These all get torqued down to 18 pound-feet in that particular sequence that I just showed on the screen. We got all 15 of them torqued down. I'm going to go over them one more time just to make sure I didn't miss any. But I think we're in good shape here. All right, things are coming right along on this one. So I think I'll call it quits here. And on the next one, I'll go ahead and put the crank pulley on, and the oil pan pickup tube, valve cover gaskets, and then we'll go from there. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.